It's good to be here. I can't really see you. The lights are in my face, but I know you're here. So thank you for waking up and showing up. I have 15 minutes, and I think I'm a cousin of Fidel Castro. I'm used to 3 hours, so let's see if I can improvise and keep to the time. So from my accent, you can hear that I'm not from Providence, Rhode Island. I was born to a Greek Orthodox Serbian mother with she had an Austrian mother, Catholic, and my father was a Croatian Jew. I was born in Israel, so that's two of the worst conflicts you can imagine. Ended up being a non-combat soldier in the Israeli army, a sergeant, spent time in the West Bank and Lebanon. The image that I remember a lot from childhood is a Jewish mother naked holding her baby before she was going to be shot somewhere in the Ukraine in a ditch she has dug. So humiliation. Questioning why is it that we are hated so much throughout history. And then constantly living next to the Palestinians, seeing how one victimized group can eventually end up victimizing another group. And as a soldier, I remember seeing our Secret Service in Lebanon, walking like with jeans, guns tacked to the back, talking to a collaborator in Lebanon. The sadness, the humiliation, I thought the person is completely unsafe when they go back. But I was just a young 20-year-old, 19-year-old. Running at 2 in the morning in Balata refugee camp near Nablus, through a shack, M16, turn to the left, there's a cupboard. It's all dirt. There's no floor. Beautiful sheets and white pillows. And I just think to myself, I hope we don't rip it all out. I'm thinking of what my mother, the Serbs, said about the Nazis, and I just hope that we are not going to violate that space badly. Take a turn to the right. It's a little light dangling from a cable. And a Palestinian mother looking at me suddenly. And she looks much older than she probably is, worn by the sun as a refugee. She looks at me, I'm 19 or 20, and suddenly her eyes kind of show kindness. To her left is her daughter, my age. Suddenly I see her. And there's just cold, hard hate. And nothing I can do, I have to lower my eyes. And I realize she grew up under occupation. This is before the first Intifada. Those are just snippets. I remember then driving back, we were driving back to Israel proper at 4 in the morning after we cemented a house in the old Kasbah of Nablus. We gave the family 20 minutes to take everything they own out. The son was suspected of being a terrorist, basically a member of the PLO at the time. And we cemented the house. We do some humiliating things. So I ended up in London for 2 years after my military service. Worked a bit with the homeless, saw how the Irish are being laughed at for being stupid. And I like to do the Socratic method. What do the English admire most? Language. I said, the last 200 years, poetry, playwrights, the Irish dominate, right? But my very smart English friends were making jokes of the Irish constantly and how stupid they are. And why I'm talking about that, because we're going to end up here in America. I came to America, I had no intentions of coming here. My sister's husband worked at Children's Hospital. Came to college, was not going to get involved. I come from too many conflicts in my DNA. I was going to just be an Athenian. Growing up as Spartan, I was going to be an Athenian. But the Charles Stewart case happened. He shot his pregnant wife. He said it was a black man. Black man was charged and arrested. Turns out the case fell apart. But every night I saw on TV black man in Mission Hill housing project, pants down, it's cold, it's winter, being searched. I didn't understand at the time that it looked exactly like what we were doing to the Palestinians, what was done to my people in Europe 50 years before. I didn't understand that, but I connected with a minister. in Four Corners of Dorchester. I had no idea that I stumbled into the worst year of Boston's history. In fact, Americans' history in terms of violence was the height of the crack epidemic, 89, 90. Boston had 152 homicides. And I befriended a big drug dealer who was exactly my age. We were both born in 1965. First, we heard about each other for 3 months, but we didn't see each other. But my accent is a bit distinctive, so when I walked into the minister's house, which was another little shack in Four Corners, the most violent neighborhood in Boston, Sal was talking to some gang members. He was the leader. He had an AK-47, which is what the Palestinians had, right? We're divided in the Middle East between those who have American weapons versus those who have Russian weapons. And Sal was holding court, and he heard me across. There was a wall. We didn't see each other, but he heard me say hello, etc. And across the wall, across the room, came the question, Teny, what are you doing to my Palestinian brothers? He was a gang leader in Four Corners. Pretty remarkable. We became good friends. He took me to crack houses. I photographed them. I used to work in one of the richest malls in America, Chestnut Hill. I would try and chase people who try and steal my Ralph Lauren goods. And Sal would laugh. He said, Teny, I never need to leave the neighborhood. It all comes to me. He had Guess jeans, 20 of them, silk shirts, and in Four Corners, if you did not have Adidas shoes, you would be beaten. And that was coming from Chestnut Hill. And he showed me. I said, but when they get arrested, the drug user, says Teny, they'll get released that night because they'll drive the guards crazy. So I learned about the whole underground economy, which then at Tufts University I learned is actually 20% of the world economy is underground, what they call the black market. The day before Sal died, he said, Teny, it's too late for me, but help those young kids. And we as middle-class educated people, this was not my battle. I was not going to stay. It just was one of those other steps that dragged me deeper and deeper into what now we say in the Nonviolence Institute. The principles of nonviolence, and the step is make a deeper commitment to the cause. It's a process. All of us sink deeper and deeper into our cause and calling if we're lucky in life. So in Boston, we stumbled into a solution, sort of Gideon's army. 5 street workers, outreach workers, 3 African-American clergy, 3 or 4 probation officers, and a few motivated gang unit officers took 1,600 kids where they deemed the problem to the police, narrowed it down to 1,200 gang members, 300 hardcore. Now that's a manageable problem. Anyone here is a management consultant? Know that that's how you go after problems. You manage them. 152 homicides. Fast forward 7 years, 31 homicides. We know today, we call it now, and there were 2 academicians that help us, David Kennedy and Anthony Braga. David Kennedy has a book called Don't Shoot. I highly recommend it. He's an amazing thinker. He's now at John Jay College. I'm part of his national network. And he quotes me, and that's where I need your help. I got 7 years. He quotes me 3 years ago saying that in 10 years, if we don't cut the homicide rate in the United States by half, I'm going to have a class action lawsuit against the United States government for failing to protect its people. So you're my second favorite group in the United States. My first favorite group, of course, are gang members and their families and those who die every day from war in the richest country on the planet. You're my second favorite. You're the group I thought I came here to America for, the people who are the can-do Americans. There's a lot of problems in this society, but try in Italy or England or in Israel to kind of come and go and galvanize society to change. Doesn't happen. This is really the greatest model. You created the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the environmental movement. So I propose a new environmental movement. We have, sadly, I ended up at Harvard studying the Greeks, studying theology. Democracy is a very short experiment. Athens had it for less than 100 years. Rome, as a republic, collapsed pretty quickly, became a dictatorship. Florence, you remember Enron? The Medicis, right? Wiped that out, and a bitter Machiavelli wrote his books because he was removed from power. That's why he wrote his books. And then American and English democracies are actually the longest running experiments. It's not very promising. Let's not take it for granted. At Harvard, I asked the young students, this was before 2001, does it ever occur to you you're not going to live in freedom? And they said, absolutely not. I think 2001 did us a favor, September, did us a favor. We had to revisit the strength of liberalism. What do we care about? What is freedom about? But we cannot do it when we now have, when I grew up in Israel, thinking about freedom, the gulags were my nemesis. The Siberian jails were the nemesis. We now have more people in jail than any other society, not per capita, than any other society. We cannot sit in straight face and have that. In the last 10 years, since September 2001, we almost had 200,000 homicides. What is the cost, you think, of 200? I'm going to throw an Institute t-shirt to someone who guesses it close to right. What is the cost of 240 homicides? Guess. 240 homicides. $1 million. 27 million. 400 million. Was it? 1 billion. Say it again? 200 billion. No. All right. We got to stop at some point. You were the closest. Here you go. $2 billion. A homicide is $8.3 million. Showing up to the scene, investigation, trial, jail, loss of income. It doesn't talk about the effects on the neighborhood. Does not include, we're not going to open a Starbucks here or a restaurant because of violence. It doesn't talk about the kids that Hillary sees who have now developmental issues. We have PTSD. Dean Esserman, who used to speak here, said that there's no P. There's no post-traumatic stress disorder to our children. There's just traumatic stress. They're not coming back from Iraq into a civilian life. They're living in environments that are traumatic. And what it is, it's costing us, the taxpayers, insane amount of money. So here is a hotel. If I'm going to smoke weed, not wake up, not get a job, I'm not educated, I'm going to say, hey, put me in a hotel, $100,000. How many of you taxpayers will say, yes, we'll do that? None of you. We're doing it every way. It's called maximum security. In Rhode Island, $100,000, right next to the shopping malls in Cranston. A bullet to the stomach, about $300,000, courtesy of the taxpayer, uncompensated care. We are insane. We now know how to cut in cities. We work now in Oakland, we just started. We're going to do Detroit, Camden, Baton Rouge, parts of LA. We know how to cut homicides by at least 50%. And I'll talk about it. I have 2 minutes left. I knew I'm going to run out of time. But we know how to do that. This is now the framework of putting partners together, mapping who are the 0.3% in a city that cause 70% of the violence. And one of them works here today, was a gang leader, Dominican gang leader on the south side, works now at Trinity through us, 5 dead between them. His rival is working through welding, also through us. No shootings for a year now. Another one's a drug dealer in a housing project, single mom, federal prison, finished magna cum laude, University of Rhode Island this past May. He's now at the Actors Studio in New York, where Robert De Niro went. We are wasting human capital. And what I propose is, that's a bit of from Zionism. It's a very dirty word, but that's the one good idea of self-help, is people like me are not going to save the tribe. We need to rebuild the workforce, and we need to create those former combatants and former gang leaders to be the peacemakers. And that's what we have at the Institute. The Institute staff, half have been to jail for very serious. They were the former leader of the Latin Kings, works for us. The former founder of the biggest Asian gang. We're the 3rd biggest Cambodian city in the United States. Works for us for the last 7 years. He calmed down what was daily shootings and homicides. And we need to recycle them into the economy. We've done it in Belfast, we've done it in other places. The biggest peacemakers in Israel are former soldiers. It makes a lot of sense. But we need to think a bit differently. And like Mr. Friedman yesterday said, what do we do with all the people who retire? Let's bring them into the economy like we did with women. Let's do the same. Create a new recycling movement. Let's recycle human capital and not waste it. And this is a completely solvable problem. I do not know why it's not on any of the presidential campaign, why it's not there. We are living with a constant violence. And don't let the FBI fool you that homicides are down 40%. 1990 was a freak moment. 1990 to 92, 93 was the height of the crack epidemic. But what we have now, we are exceptional as an advanced society in terms of homicide. We're not exceptional in car breaks. We're not exceptional in house breaks. Any of those. We're exceptional in homicides. And about 900,000 people get assaulted with guns every year. We're not going to change really gun laws. So we need to, and that's where you can be very helpful. What we need in our field, we don't have a field. We want to build a national field, not just the Institute. Our partners at John Jay, our partners in California. What we need is to get engineers and designers to bring together how we build a field. It's a very solvable problem. We've done it now in every city we've worked at. But we will need really to engage our society. This is not a problem happening there. Morally, it's wrong. And financially, if you're a conservative financial person, like a Milton, I always say the Institute needs to argue through Martin Luther King and Milton Friedman. And it works both ways. It really does. Right? We are wasting money, which is eating our future. Right? And makes us less of a competitive society. So when we think about innovation, when we think about technology, we need to harness that, and we are using technology, but we need to get more of you involved in this field. There's such a big issue that is constantly ignored, it's not funded, and yet it's to see former gang leaders create poetry of peace. You know, we face guns, we dismantle things, to see people that were written off and are now productive and happy, and the joy they have that they're back alive and they're productive, that's what they want. It is a wonderful, wonderful gift. So I think I'm over, and I just want to thank you.